Hello friends, welcome once again to Dr. Rajesh Verma's YouTube channel. And in this video, we'll be discussing insight learning. Let's start with the meaning of insight learning. Just observe the word insight. In plus sight. Inside the sight. How it is possible to look inside the sight? That is, whatever which we are looking around, that is your sight. But when I look inside me, that is a kind of meditation, that is a kind of samadhi, that is a kind of internal observation, is known as the insight. Insight means the capacity to gain an accurate and deep understanding of a phenomena, event, someone or something. When there is a problem, there is an issue, there is a challenge, understanding of that event and the accurate understanding, that time we can safely say that we have gained insight in the particular challenge. It's a kind of intuition or looking, I told you earlier, inward. Looking inward means observing our own thought process, observing our own the process of problem solving. Though it's a bit difficult to explain the insight in clear words, but with the experience we can understand what I mean to say insight, or what the other psychologist used to say insight. The only thing is, when something comes from insight without the clear-cut explanation from where it has come out and how it has came out, that phenomena or that event is roughly called as the insight. Now, if we integrate this insight with the learning, you know what's the learning? The permanent modification in behavior by virtue of experience. If this insight leads to the modification of our behavior, or if we are able to learn to solve a problem, if we are able to learn to acquire the new phenomena by virtue of our experience, we generally call it as a insight learning. What NCERT says is that the process by which the solution to a problem suddenly becomes clear. You have seen that in cartoons, near his head a glowing bulb is shown. That means there is a clear phenomena of insight. If we try to explain the insight learning in terms of the cognition, then it's a cognitive process. Insight here means the activities or the processes that goes inside our cognition. So the cognitive process where an organism instantly realizes the solution of a problem or a challenge, that comes under the domain of insight learning. This was all about the meaning and definition of insight learning. Now let us look into the historical and introductory part of from where this phrase insight learning came up. You remember Wolfgang Kohler, a German psychologist, belongs to Gestalt School of Psychology. He suggested the concept of insight learning in 1920. Through a series of experiments, he demonstrated insight learning. And out of the several experiments he could carry out, the most famous was the experiment on the chimp known as the Sultan. These experiments were carried out at the Tenerife island of Africa. He worked there for 6 years and wrote a very important book named as the Mentality of Apes in 1917. The book contains how chimps solve their problems. And by observing the problem solving ability of the chimpanzees, the Kohler could demonstrate to the world that there is a phenomena, there is a process that occurs inside us, and he named that phenomena as a insight learning. That Sultan could solve various problems without any clue, without any trial and error. He instantly able to do what he was required to do. Sultan could fetch the bananas by joining the stick, by keeping one box above another. When Kohler removed all the boxes from the case and went inside the cage himself, the Sultan could climb over the shoulders or the back of the Kohler and fetch the banana. So this way he could demonstrate with several experiments that we have a phenomena that is known as the learning by insight or insight learning. Now if you look deeper and keenly observe the concept of insight learning, it has some specific characteristics. The first one, it's abrupt and instant. It is not a systematic process, it's instant. Instantly, a picture becomes crystal clear. Then, the past experiences are instrumental in insight learning. If the individual has the abundance of experiences in the past, certainly that experiences which are stored in our memory helps in gaining insight into the solution of a problem. So the past experiences or the memory is a very important phenomena that plays instrumental role in the insight. Psychophysiological maturity affects the process of insight. The individual who is lesser mature at the psychological and physiological level may take little bit more time for gaining the insight, whereas the individual who is psychophysiologically mature can gain the insight little bit early. Then intelligence, very important contributor in insight. Rather, I can say that insight is the function of intelligence. Higher the intellectual ability, better the and quicker the insight. And the insight is dependent upon the spatial arrangement of components of a problem. This means that the components are placed, whether they are closer to each other or they are in special type of arrangement, or the space within which these components are available. So that arrangement also plays an instrumental role in insight. In insight, the perception of the problem changes. Interesting phenomena. Before we gain insight, the perception was different. This means the prior perception and the post perception differs. We start looking or perceiving the problem with the different perspective post gaining the insight. The phenomena of perceptual organization affects the insight learning. How our perceptual system organizes the inputs received from the components of the problem also plays significant role in insight. Old objects appear in new pattern by virtue of insight. That is the similar to the sixth point. That is when we perceive a problem and when we gain an insight to the solution of that problem, at that moment, the old pattern looks into a freshly new pattern. Then understanding the relation between the objects or contents of the problem is the cornerstone of insight. Means what are the components, what are the contents, what are the objects of the problem, how these objects and contents are related to each other. The moment we start gaining the awareness regarding these relationships, certainly this is the important step towards gaining the insight. And insight is the outcome of association between various cognitive components such as your thought process, your memory, and your perception. This is a concluding feature of insight. Means the various cognitive processes, how they and how quickly they get entangled with each other pertaining to the that particular problem, and that helps in gaining insight about the solution of the problem, and this forms insight learning. Now, what are some factors that affect the insight learning? The most important one is the experience. What is experience? It's a kind of memories stored inside your brain. Memories of what? The previous occurrences, the previous events, previous phenomenon we have observed, we have experienced. These all, when combined together, they contribute significantly in gaining insight. Better the experiences, similar the experiences, higher are the chances of gaining insight regarding a particular problem. Then intelligence. Intelligence is the prime factor of insight. Higher the intelligence, better will be insight. How intelligence influence the insight? Intelligence is the global capacity to solve problem, to adjust with the environment, to deal with the novel situations, to deal with the challenges come to the individual, adaptations. So intelligence is a large construct that helps in meeting our challenges and makes us human and rational individual. Certainly, intelligence is the prime and the major factor that influence the insight. Next, immediate environment. Which type of environment? Psychosocial and physical environment. If the environment is stimulating, the situational factors. What are the situational factors? The spatial arrangement of components of problem, favorable or unfavorable environment, etc. These influences the insight. This means the situational environment and its component certainly influences the insight. Next, the psychological health. The psychological well-being has a significant bearing on the development of the insight. The better the mental health, it is better to gain insight quickly and accurately. This means psychological health is directly related to the insight. And finally, psychophysical efforts. How much psychological and physical resources are invested by the individual for solving a particular problem. The more the efforts, that is the concentrated efforts, the better are the chances of gaining insight earlier. This means the solution seeker has to invest a significant amount of psychophysical efforts to gain the insight for the solution of the problem. Okay, dear friends, that was all about insight learning. So wait for my next video in which we'll be going to discuss the classical conditioning. Till the time, if you love and like the contents of this video, tell to others. But if you have any question, any query, or any critical comment to make, you can drop a comment in my comment box, or you can email me at vermasujit@yahoo.com. Thank you friends for watching this video.